After question period today, the House will be dealing with second reading of bills. At the moment, there are 12 bills at that stage, 11 at Committee of the Whole, and 20 at third reading stage. One of the issues being dealt with in question period today, no doubt, will be the introduction of Bill 40, Conflicts of Interest Act, as introduced last week by the Attorney General.
Let us pray. We, thine unworthy servants, here gathered together in thy name, do humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our considerations. Amen.
Introduction of visitors. Presenting petitions.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you. I'd like to file with the Assembly some 1,563 names of petitions protesting the cuts in seniors, the cutbacks, and demanding the withdrawal of these budget measures. This is a continuation of what I did last week, Mr. Speaker.
Reading and receiving petitions. Presenting reports by standing and special committees. Notices of motions. Introduction of bills. Tabling returns and reports.
Edmonton Avonmore.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to file for the information of the members opposite 4 copies of Leviticus chapter 27, and I would direct their attention to verses 3 through 7.
It may be appropriate but highly unusual. I'm sure we won't have other parts of the Bible being tabled in future. Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to file the answer to written question 373 and table with the Assembly the biennial review of the Alberta Environmental Centre.
Tabling.
I'm sorry, that last tabling, Mr. Speaker, was the biennial review of the Alberta Environmental Centre.
Thank you.
Introduction of special guests.
Minister of Culture, Multiculturalism.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are in the members' gallery today 3 senior citizens from the Edmonton area, accompanied by Ruth Adria, who has spent a good part of her adult life working with, and 4 seniors. I'd like Ruth to stand up, as well as her guests Hazel Johnson, Anna Zilke, and Irene Roberts, and that the Legislative Assembly would give them all a warm welcome.
Edmonton Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I have 2 groups to introduce to members here today. The first one is a group of 25 students from the Oliver School downtown here in Edmonton Centre. They're with their teachers Bernie Ward, Sharon Fitzsimmons, and Jennifer Taylor. I'm glad they're here and ask them now to please rise and be welcomed by the members of the Assembly. Also, Mr. Speaker, from the Jack Braden Community Institute, we have 75 of their students who are working at upgrading their skills. 75 members are students in both the members and public gallery, together with their teachers Cheryl Goodale, Kathy Olson, Diane LaRose, and Jutta Hansen. I'd ask that they now please rise and be welcomed by the members here today.
Calgary Mountain View.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure to introduce Mrs. Margaret Cripps and her daughter Sharita. Mrs. Cripps is visiting us from Unity, Saskatchewan, and she's been for many years active in the CCF and the NDP. She's here on a holiday, and I'd like to ask her to rise and be greeted by the members this afternoon.
Ministerial statements. Oral question period.
Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, to the Premier. Mr. Speaker, after this spectacle last year of the Zerusky affair, as well as the controversy surrounding the Premier's oil and gas holdings, this government has finally been dragged, kicking and screaming, into enacting conflict of interest legislation. Mr. Speaker, legislation that appears to follow the conservative model of being too late, too loose, and much too weak. Mr. Speaker, I'm sure all members recall the specific situation of the Premier last year, where the Premier got in trouble for only disclosing land descriptions of his oil and gas holdings, a perfect example of disclosure that simply isn't good enough. But let's see, Mr. Speaker, how much the Premier has actually learned about the conflict of interest, Mr. Speaker. To the Premier, I want to ask the Premier point blank, will the Premier now fully and publicly disclose all of his oil and gas holdings, as well as all other holdings he has, including the names of the companies he's dealing with, all direct associates, all partners, and the monetary extent of these holdings, not just a legal description of the land?
First of all, Mr. Speaker, why the honourable member wants to refer to a Zerusky affair, there wasn't one. There was no conflict with Mr. Zerusky, the honourable member from Smoky Lake. Then, Mr. Speaker, I didn't get any trouble with my disclosures. There was no trouble with them. They met all of the disclosure rules, fully disclosed. And that's what I'll continue to always do, as will all of the members of the government.
Well, we see why this government still doesn't understand. You avoid the question, Mr. Speaker, but that's the reality of it, and people understand that full well, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, let's look at the specific bill, because obviously there is no disclosure in it, Mr. Speaker, and I want to have all members recall the conflict of interest charges against the former Conservative Cabinet Minister federally, Sinclair Stevens, a man whose supposed blind trust turned out to be highly illuminated, Mr. Speaker. I can do no better than to quote Mr. Justice Parker, the justice who led the inquiry into the conflict of interest charges against this Premier's Conservative cousin. He said, and I state, Mr. Speaker, full public disclosure must be the cornerstone of any conflict of interest legislation. Period, Mr. Speaker. My question is simply this to the Premier. Why didn't the government follow this sound advice and demand full public disclosure in the bill that they brought before this House, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, I'm uncertain why the Leader of the Opposition wants to follow somebody from Ontario's comments. What we did was get the chief judge of the province of Alberta, two other highly respected Albertans, Mr. Frank King, who, as members know, was the leader in putting on the Calgary Olympics, and then Mr. Walter Buck, who served for so many years here in this legislature. Now, they made a report, and the report is the foundation for the conflict of interest legislation which the Attorney General tabled.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the reality is this whole government can just hand in the blind trusts again. We still don't know what's going on, Mr. Speaker, and that's not good enough. Mr. Speaker, that's my point. We can still continue to hide private business dealings from the public. That could influence the job here, Mr. Speaker. My question simply to the Premier, when he went to all this trouble, will the Premier explain now to the people of Alberta how they can believe that this government is serious about cleaning up its act when it refuses to come clean and tell them exactly what private interests they have, along with all the relevant details about these interests, Mr. Speaker?
Well, again, Mr. Speaker, I really question the Leader of the Opposition if he is now saying that the Chief Judge of Alberta and Mr. King and Mr. Buck were delinquent in their efforts to look at all of the conflict of interest legislation across Canada, some in the United States, brought us in a 258-page report, I believe it was, which we followed in almost entirely in bringing in this legislation. And now to have the honourable member say that when these people, these very outstanding Albertans, make the presentation of the report to us, at our request, by the way, I just remind him that it was the government who asked for this report. And then, Mr. Speaker, say that somehow things are being hidden, I think is absolute nonsense. And as a matter of fact, as I recall, there's never been in this Legislative Assembly that I can recall a conflict of the Legislative Assembly Act except the Leader of the Opposition, who, as I recall, stood and asked for members to let him off of that, which they did because it was a misunderstanding. So don't give us this high and mighty pile of baloney, because what we have here is a report from 3 distinguished Albertans, the Chief Judge of the Provincial Court, who have given us a report. We brought in the details in the legislation, and to now stand in his place and start complaining, I think, is just political nonsense.
Second main question.
Question is to this Premier. The pile of baloney is this exercise in PR that isn't fooling anybody, Mr. Speaker. This is a pile of and they understand it. And this Premier, if you understand anything about conflict of interest, would understand it too, Mr. Speaker. But my question goes a little further in this, Mr. Speaker. So much by his answers about the new era of openness that we've been promised. Mr. Speaker, conflict of interest legislation is only one component of a comprehensive package of open, honest, and good government, a package that this government has continually refused and continues to refuse to enact. Mr. Speaker, let's start with the freedom of information for Albertans, a glaring necessity best illustrated by this government's refusal, absolute refusal to reveal the secret agreement it made with its pal Peter Pocklington, an agreement that gave away millions and millions of dollars, Mr. Speaker. To the Premier, when will the Premier bring in a freedom of information legislation for Albertans, legislation that allows all Albertans to see exactly how their tax money is being spent?
Mr. Speaker, of course, any member can bring in legislation and convince the House that it should be adopted. That's something that every member has the right to do, and the honourable member wants to do it. He should proceed that way and see if he is clever enough and good enough to convince the House. But having said that, let me just remind the honourable member that the government follows Beauchesne and other parliamentary rules in which we provide all the information that is possibly needed and required. The only time that it is not is when it has to do with people's personal matters, personal private lives, or competitiveness. Now, all the freedom of information legislation in Canada also does the same thing. So to hear the honourable member demand certain legislation when we're already meeting all the needs, I think is again just tilting at windmills.
Hide, hide, hide. Secret, secret, secrets. Not tilting at windmills, Mr. Speaker. We wouldn't have got in the bamboos we've been in if we'd had freedom of information, Mr. Speaker. But so much for this new openness in government. Let's look at another accountability issue, Mr. Speaker. Albertans have seen this government for years stuff its bloated foreign offices with loyal conservative cronies and its board, commissions, and crown corporations crammed with party bagmen and hacks, Mr. Speaker. My question is simply this to the Premier. When will the Premier bring in legislation that allows all Albertans the opportunity to apply for such positions and which ends the blatant patronage his government has been practicing so heavily since it took office?
Well, Mr. Speaker, it must have been the members' association with other members of the NDP over the past few days that have caused him to come back here and start calling Albertans names like that. I mean, what kind of nonsense is that he has the right to somehow call fine, outstanding Albertans those kind of names? What the government does is make sure that in the appointments that they're required to make, and as I point out, required to make, I mean, we must fill these appointments, Those appointments are filled by the best people for the job that the government can obtain.
That is really the biggest joke I've heard in the legislature, Mr. Speaker. If you got a Tory card, there must be a couple that haven't been hired so far, Mr. Speaker. Is there a couple more? So no to that. Again, Mr. Speaker, let's go try one more thing about good government, Mr. Speaker, and it has to do with this government's secret deals from its friends behind closed doors. We've seen, for example, this government's loan guarantee fiasco blow up in its face. And I'm talking about the Export Loan Guarantee Program, which is behind closed doors, and as the Minister of Culture says, by who you know. If you're a good Tory, you get, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Premier simply this. When will the Premier bring in legislation that requires full public disclosure of all loan and loan guarantee recipients so that Albertans and the business community can know who's getting public money and who is not, Mr. Speaker?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition is having a bad day, because what he's done is dredge up all the old questions he's already asked. I guess he went away for a little break, decided he'd ask them all again, because we've dealt with them so many times in the legislature. And the Honourable Leader of the Opposition should know, and the Minister of Economic Development and Trade may want to straighten him out again, that this program is one that helps. It is a program. It is a program that people fit, and when they fit the program, it automatically supports the request for export guarantees. And it has helped small and big and companies all over Alberta. It supports them in exporting their products throughout the world, and it is strongly supported by Albertans. Now, it is true that in some of these loans, obviously there's a competitive feature, and that these people would not want their competitive dealings to be made public, because these are things that make them able to compete against others. And it's been accepted in parliaments from time immemorial that those kind of things are not disclosed in a legislature. Now, for the Leader of the Opposition to suddenly start saying he is going to demand this, I think is, again, he's just coming up with nonsense. This is fully understood in Beauchesne and in all parliaments that this kind of information is not disclosed.
Thank you, Honourable Member. You've had your questions. Now we'll hear from Edmonton Meadowlark on behalf of the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, a soon-to-be published study by Environment Canada predicts that global warming could have a significant and serious effect on soil moisture and therefore on prairie agriculture as early as the middle of the next century. In fact, Stuart Cohen, a climatologist with Environment Canada, who wrote the report, went on to say that agricultural drought may be an increasing problem in the future as a result of global warming. My question is to the Minister of Agriculture. I wonder whether the Minister of Agriculture could tell us what he has concluded himself about global warming and what kind of discussions he's had with the Minister of Energy to address this problem.
As I stated in the House before, Mr. Speaker, we're watching this with a great degree of interest. The science related to global warming and its impact on agriculture is sending a variety of mixed signals out, and we're assessing the various signals.
Yeah, I guess the rhetorical question would be, how long are they going to watch, Mr. Speaker? But my second question is to the Premier. I wonder whether the Premier could tell us what he personally has concluded about global warming and why his government has not undertaken to provide real leadership in the areas of electrical energy conservation, enhanced fuel efficiency for automobiles, alternative energy sources, and alternative modes of transportation.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I guess there was more than one question in that the member's presentation there. We are doing all of those things, Mr. Speaker, and I find it remarkable with the member talking about drought in Alberta's agriculture right now. If you get out of Edmonton, he'd find out that the province has got tremendous stores of moisture that have all over the province is turning green and healthy and strong this spring in agriculture. Doesn't need a diversion?
It's a common mistake, Mr. Speaker, to believe that tomorrow will look exactly like today will look. And if this Premier would understand the effects and the potential effects of global warming, he wouldn't be smiling in his chair today, laughing about the potential effects of that. There won't even be enough water, Mr. Speaker, to fill Buffalo Lake. Half full. My third question is to the Minister of the Environment. What, I wonder, Mr. Speaker, has the Minister of the Environment concluded about global warming, and why hasn't he undertaken specific measures to require that CFCs from discarded refrigerators and discarded air conditioning units are trapped and collected so that they don't escape into the atmosphere and contribute further to global warming?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I really don't know where this honourable member has been for the last year, as probably the most extensive studies to be undertaken anywhere in this country have been taking place throughout this province through the clean air strategy that has been developed through the Ministry of Energy and the Ministry of Environment. Good thinking people traveling the province to get input into the kinds of things that this province needs to do to make a reasonable contribution to the reduction of those gases that contribute to not only the greenhouse effect, global warming, but depletion of the ozone. In addition to that, there are national protocols that we have entered into relative to a decrease in automobile emissions by 50% by the year 1995. We have entered into protocols relative to the decrease in packaging and waste by 50% by the year 2000. So there are numerous protocols that we have entered into. There are numerous public consultation programs now underway. The honourable member should take the time, get out from under the dome, attend some of these meetings, express his concerns in those forums, and once we get all that evidence in, we will make some reasonable, sound decisions.
The chair recommends to Edmonton Meadowlark, Beauchesne 409, subsection 3, questions, the first part of both of the first two questions. We're seeking an opinion, and that's not appropriate for question period. Thank you very much. You can read the blues as well as anybody else. Member for Clover Bar.
Certainly appropriate in this minister's case.
The Departments of Municipal Affairs and Environment have been assisting municipal representatives to try to find a solution to the regional disposal, waste disposal difficulties that we have in the metropolitan area. Would the ministers, I should say, either Environment or Municipal Affairs, update this assembly about how close to a solution are we?
Mr. Speaker, just to share the responsibilities of an answer today, I would like to bring the Assembly up to date with regards to a partnership that has emerged over the last few months between the City of Edmonton and the adjacent municipalities. During this period of time, the Deputy Minister of Municipal Affairs is co-chairing, along with the Deputy Minister of Environment, a committee that involves a political group and as well a technical group looking at the various aspects that are necessary to bring about a regional waste management authority. There has been significant progress in terms of determining the alternatives that are available, firstly, and secondly, we are now looking at the various aspects by which this responsibility can be shared. And I want to offer my congratulations to this Assembly, Mr. Speaker, to those municipalities that have made a very significant attempt to bring about a successful conclusion to this major challenge that's facing Edmonton and regional area.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the constituents of Clover Bar and I personally believe that searching for a landfill is no longer searching for a solution. Now, is this regional committee or task force looking for a management solution, or are they looking for a dump, if I believe the media reports?
Mr. Speaker, no, we aren't looking for a dump. We're looking for a comprehensive waste management solution. It's something that certainly hasn't been tried in this province involving a major city like the city of Edmonton, and it's being attempted in other jurisdictions across the country, i.e. the metropolitan region of Toronto. It's a very, very difficult situation to deal with because in this case we have had to bring 19 19 municipal jurisdictions together to look at the various kinds of technologies that might be used to handle waste in the Edmonton region. I think the main point to consider here is that this government has been successful, Municipal Affairs and Environment, in bringing these municipalities together, in getting from these municipalities a resolve that a regional solution is the best way to go, and that these communities will be working together to find a comprehensive regional solution to the very critical waste management problem that exists in the Edmonton region.
Edmonton Calder.
Mr. Speaker, my questions are to the Minister of, Associate Minister of Family and Social Services. The government report claiming my future supports people with disabilities living in the community and states, and I quote, "Support and services must be developed from an individual's needs and abilities." Despite this claim, Mr. Speaker, this government has established a maximum of $3,000 a month for personal support for people with a disability, regardless of that person's needs. So my question to the Minister, the Associate Minister, why has the Associate Minister put in place a policy that is directly contrary to the government's purported commitment to community living and which prohibits many people with a disability from moving into the community?
Mr. Speaker, the policy that we have put in place to integrate persons with disabilities in this province is not contrary to the intent of the report that was read out. In fact, it's very consistent with that report.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that's just absolutely ridiculous. Many people with a disability need more than $3,000 a month to live in the community. Surely the Associate Minister understands that, and I would ask him, will the Associate Minister now agree to change this policy and provide for individualized funding based on the real needs of the people that are trying to move out into the community?
Mr. Speaker, we have in place in this province individualized funding based on the specific needs of the individual, and it's working very well. I might add at the moment that there are at least 400 people living in institutions who have applied to move into the community, and their needs are being evaluated and assessed. And that doesn't indicate to me that the program isn't working. Quite the contrary, Mr. Speaker. I'm very proud of what we are doing and the strides that we have made for persons with disabilities in this province, and we will continue to move forward.
Good work.
Edmonton Whiteman.
Mr. Speaker, workers throughout Alberta are very vocal, and rightfully so, over occupational hazards that affect their health and well-being. A recent situation involves the now-closed plant of General Ordnance in Raymond, Alberta. The former quality assurance manager was tested at elevated levels of lead in the blood, well above the dangerous points, or well above the dangerous point. I do not understand how such an unhealthy working environment was tolerated by the Department of Occupational Health and Safety. To the minister responsible for occupational health and safety, will the minister explain why such little regard was demonstrated for workers at that plant?
Mr. Speaker, I don't believe that we have little regard for workers in any plant in the province of Alberta. I'm not aware, as of today, the circumstances that's being raised, but if the honourable member has more material for me, I'd be glad to look at it. Occupation Health and Safety investigates these concerns quite quickly and making sure that the health and safety of workers is foremost in our policies. So if the honourable member has something for me, I'd be glad to get it.
Mr. Speaker, I certainly do. I'll send him over some information so he's aware of what's happening when it comes to working conditions for Albertans throughout this province. Secondly, to the minister, will the minister inform this House as to when he intends to beef up inspections to ensure that working people of Alberta have the protection they deserve?
Mr. Speaker, if the honourable member has some specifics about safety in the workplace, I'd be glad to get it. I've been touring the province quite dramatically and visiting work sites, and I don't get that reading from the workers or the employer. So when he says have safety for workers, that's exactly what we're doing, Mr. Speaker, and I'm doing my utmost with Occupational Health and Safety and the Workers' Compensation Board in conjunction with the two that we provide the safety in the workplace in this province.
Athabasca-Laklavish.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Honourable Minister of Recreation and Parks. Mr. Speaker, there seemed to be a lot of confusion in regards to the $125,000 that Ms. Helen Ridgway donated to the Alberta Wildlife Park. Some say that the government was involved. My question to the Honourable Minister is, what are the facts in regards to this donation?
Mr. Speaker, the question it relates to some of the news items today in which there's been innuendo stated that the government was involved back in the days when Mrs. Ridgway had donated some of her life savings to the development of the Aunt Helen's petting area at the Alberta Wildlife Park. In and around the years of 1978 to 1979, Mrs. Ridgway had donated upwards of $120,000 to $125,000 of her savings to the private sector, to individuals who were operating and developing an area of collection of animals, who had stated to her that they would set up Helen's children's farm. Mr. Cochrane and Mr. Duram at the time were developing a park that later became the Alberta Wildlife Park and was established under a foundation after they had declared that they no longer financially could operate their private sector development. Mrs. Ridgway had donated her $120,000 to the private sector operators to establish an area in their park, not a government park, called Aunt Helen's Children's Farm. The other day I approached Mrs. Ridgway and said that the government would set up an endowment in trust through the Alberta Recreation Parks and Wildlife Foundation in her name to transfer funds to the establishment in perpetuity of Aunt Helen's petting area. She said that she would not accept the endowment unless the park stayed exactly where it was. And therefore, at the present time, the offer of the government has been directed to Mrs. Ridgway in recognition of her commitment to the Alberta Wildlife Park and Aunt Helen's petting area. But at this time, if the park finds another destiny, Mrs. Ridgway has stated that she would not accept this endowment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My supplement is to the Honourable Minister of Transportation and Utilities. The Lily Creek Road has created some confusion also as its use and future use. It has been reported that the wildlife park is being closed to accommodate a dangerous goods route through that area. Could the Minister clarify this issue with this Assembly? Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, any such allegation to that effect is absolute and utter nonsense. The Lily Lake Road is secondary road 651. It essentially goes from Highway 28 to Highway 33. It goes through 3 municipalities, the MD of Sturgeon, the MD of Westlock, and the County of Barrhead. This route has been a road in place for decades. Upgrading has been going on along secondary road 651 for years. Work is underway right now on 651 in the County of Barrhead. Recently, when the MD of Sturgeon wanted to look at upgrading of an alignment that had been in place for decades, they approached Alberta Transportation Utilities, and we provided them with a grant of $38,500 to do a feasibility study, and that was to also include an environmental impact assessment for the section around Lily Lake Road. But it's a connector between Highway 28 and Highway 33. The alignment's been in place for decades, and it's absolute utter nonsense to suggest that anything dealing with the wildlife park or any upgrading on secondary road 651 has anything to do with the designation of a dangerous or special waste transportation route.
Edmonton Jasper, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Golder Associates was hired by Alberta Environment to investigate the creosote blob in the city of Calgary. There's now some evidence that this blob may have extended from the south shore, where the plant was located, into the north shore, into the residential area of Hillhurst. In addition, some of the former employees of the plant have told Golder Associates that creosote soap sawdust was dumped in the former city landfill at Tom Campbell's Hill. Will the Minister of the Environment admit that the creosote contamination in Calgary is well beyond the area studied by Golder Associates, and will he state what he's doing to secure a timely cleanup of all the creosote contamination in Calgary?
Well, first of all, Mr. Speaker, I can give the honourable member this assurance: we're doing virtually everything we can to deal with a tremendously difficult situation. A situation that was brought about through environmental ignorance and lack of laws 60, 70 years ago, and this was a family-run operation. And we're dealing with a very volatile substance here. It's a substance that is very, very hard to corral, to bring together. It's much like mercury. If it's disturbed, it spreads very, very easily. So we've set out a program. We've set out a program, Nick. You'd be interested in this because you're interested in all things that are slippery and slimy. So it's, I'm sorry. I take that back, Mr. Speaker. That first of all involves a program of identification of where this stuff is migrating. It has more moves than a stepped-on snake, believe me. Secondly, to contain the substance, and the department has done a tremendous job in containing the substance. And thirdly, to identify the kind of technology that is going to be required to decontaminate this site.
Well, speaking of being slippery, that answer sounded to me more like more studies than anything else. There is a study in the case of the original site that says the cost is $56 million to clean it up. And then you have these two other areas that I've just mentioned. The province has a total of $3 million budgeted under the Groundwater Protection Program in total, which covers this site, the two others, 12 others around the province. And I would like the minister to indicate, if he would, in view of all of the toxic sites that exist in the province, what he is doing, or how and when he's going to secure adequate funding to clean up the mess.
Well, once we have identified the kind of engineering that is going to be required to decontaminate these sites, then it will be a matter of putting in place a program to deal with the situation, but we're going to have to do it on a priority basis. This site, the Canada Creosote site on the banks of the Bow River, has been identified as the #1 priority because it's in an area where it has the potential of impacting a very, very large population. So we have said this is the priority site. Once again, we need to get a full identification of how this stuff is moving. It's starting to show up in different places. Secondly, we have in place a program of containment, and that program is working. Thirdly, we need to identify the right kind of engineering to decontaminate the site. I think the fundamental point here, Mr. Speaker, is that this was the first province, and is probably the only province, to have a program in place to identify contaminated sites. In other words, we aren't like a lot of other jurisdictions. We aren't sticking our head in the sand and saying, we don't want to know about these sites. And believe me, there are jurisdictions throughout this country where they don't want to know about the contamination because the cost of addressing it and cleaning it up is going to be a lot. This government at least has the courage to identify the site and put in place programs to do something about it.
Calgary McKnight.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Calgary's post-secondary institutions have been disseminated by the failed priorities of this government. In addition to reduction in student spaces and staff positions, SAIT and Mount Royal College have cancelled a total of 7 academic programs, while an additional 2 programs at Mount Royal College have been suspended, and the college's cooperative education program option in 4 programs has been cancelled.
Terrible.
To the Minister of Advanced Education, with Calgary institutions taking the brunt of this government's dismantling of Alberta's advanced education community, is the minister merely ignoring the crisis, or is he promoting it?
Mr. Speaker, as the honourable member knows, the post-secondary system, which is
funded amongst the highest in the nation, is no different than any other group or department in Alberta. They must learn to live within their means. My view, Mr. Speaker, is we have perhaps the highest number attending our post-secondary system. I readily concede they are facing some degree of problem with regard to access to the system. However, this government, and I think the taxpayers of Alberta, expect our post-secondary system, who set their own admission standards, set their own programs, are responsible for responding to the needs of these students.
Mr. Speaker, the institutions are caught in a real squeeze, which is inadequate funding by this province. At Mount Royal College, they already have 400 more applications as of June 4th than the total number submitted last year at the end of August. Does the minister feel that this is acceptable? Calgarians do not.
Mr. Speaker, Mount Royal College has a very proud record in the post-secondary system. There have been a variety of suggestions, Mr. Speaker, as to how they could accommodate more students. I don't think we should, at first blush, accept the principle that there's an overwhelming number, because we do know there is a multiple registering system in the province. I want the honourable member and other members to be aware, Mr. Speaker, that I am concerned about the increasing demand for the post-secondary system. However, I'm confident that the institutions, in the spirit of cooperation, if they continue to work the way they're working, will probably resolve the problem with regard to access to our post-secondary system.
Thank you, honourable member. You did get to ask your questions. I'm sure you can count to 2. Thank you. Calgary Bowl.
Mr. Speaker, my question is also to the Minister of Environment. Mr. Minister, several of my constituents have expressed concern about the finding of the 3 new deposits of creosote in this fine residential area. As this area is directly north of the old Canada creosote plant, which Alberta Environment currently has under investigation control, there is some concern with regards to the health hazards from these deposits. Can the minister give assurance to the constituents of Calgary Bow that there's no health hazards from these deposits?
Mr. Speaker, we haven't been working in isolation on this project. We have been working also with the Calgary Board of Health, and have been keeping the Board of Health and the City of Calgary advised, and the communities downstream advised to the ongoing situation relative to the Canada creosote site. The pool that was found on the north side of the river is a small pool, but it does indicate that this substance is moving in strange and mysterious ways. I am being told by my department and the Board of Health and all the other officials involved in dealing with this problem that with proper containment, and that containment is taking place, there is no danger to health.
Mr. Minister, my supplemental is there a plan in place for more extensive exploration of the North Shore in the Calgary Bow constituency to try and determine a little better the magnitude of the spread of these deposits?
Very basically, Mr. Speaker, it's all part of the ongoing investigation. Again, I have to reiterate that this substance, this creosote, is very volatile and has tremendous viscosity, and it's able to move in very, very strange ways. It's like an insidious cancer. And it's a matter of getting a handle on how this stuff is moving, the ways in which it's migrating, and once that has been identified, come to grips with the kind of engineering, and it's going to have to be very specialized engineering that is going to be used to clean it up.
Edmonton Avonmore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My questions are to the Solicitor General. Mr. Speaker, we look forward to the release of the Health Disciplines Board report on midwifery and the establishment of an implementation committee to facilitate the legalization of midwifery in Alberta and to provide for proper standards and monitoring to ensure that Alberta women and their babies receive quality care. Meanwhile, Mr. Speaker, Alberta midwives will continue to be subject to court actions which apply inappropriate tests to their actions, such as the test as to whether it is the practice of medicine without a license. My question to the Solicitor General: what assurances can the Minister give that the Implementation Committee will have a clear mandate and timeline so that will permit introduction of legislation in the 1992 spring session.
Mr. Chairman, it's fully the intention that legislation, if we are to proceed with it, will in fact proceed in 1992. The Health Disciplines Board have done an outstanding job of preparing the report, which will in fact be filed in this legislature very, very, very shortly. And at that time, very shortly thereafter, an implementation advisory committee will be struck, and they will proceed with receiving the necessary and further input from the province, and also all members of the Legislative Assembly will then have the report in their hands and also be able to respond to it. It is not the intention of this government to delay any legislation any longer than is absolutely necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Certainly there are major concerns that there will be delay. So my second question is, inasmuch as the Health Disciplines Board and the Advisory Council on Women's Issues have already had considerable input from the public, midwives, and other health professionals, will the minister commit that this committee will translate their findings into legislation and regulations that meet the needs of all Alberta women, including those from Native and cultural minority groups?
Mr. Speaker, I guess if there is a ethnic component of this whole matter, I have not been adequately advised on it at this particular point. I was of the view that we were dealing with a birthing method which is hopefully acceptable to the general public, but is most definitely a health issue, that we were dealing with that mainly, and it is our intent to continue to deal with that. Certainly I understand it to be a women's issue, but where the ethnicity of it falls in, I am a bit at a loss.
Member for Edmonton Centre.
Mr. Speaker, as the Minister of Health knows, the emphasis for health services these days is drastically shifting from the institutional to the community setting, from acute care needs to chronic care needs. Mr. Speaker, in the AIDS to Daily Living program, together with home care, AIDS to Daily Living should be the one that expands coverage for Albertans, many of whom who are chronically ill, terminally ill, or Albertans living with physical disabilities in the community. And yet, Mr. Speaker, because of recent government decisions, over 200 low-cost supplies for these Albertans will no longer be as available to them, be restricted to them for these Albertans as of July the 1st. Will the Minister of Health, for instance, explain why back supports for people who are in chronic, severe back pain are being reduced from 2 supports to only 1 per year, and why vendors throughout the province are already, before July the 1st, allowing sufferers only 1 of these supports, not the 2 that they are entitled to under this fiscal year?
Mr. Speaker, I'll certainly look into the contention in the member's question that there's been a advance of the effective date of the changes that we've put in place. But with respect to the first part of the question, which was really about the issue of adding some benefits and taking some off the general list, those which were taken off were those which could be covered with a cost of under $150 per year to the client, hence the low-cost aids. But at the same time, as opposed to it being a program that simply took away things, there were major additions onto the program, such as those we've already discussed in the House, like power wheelchairs and ventilators and suction therapy, but also low vision aids, diabetic supplies through the Canadian Diabetic Association, ostomy supplies, catheter supplies, which were not formally covered under the program. But with respect to the contention in the honourable member's question that someone's jumping the gun, I'll certainly check into that for the honourable member.
And I'll send her the letters from the vendors. But, Mr. Speaker, the point is you don't cut back on service when trying to expand a program overall. And one of the more insensitive moves, and I think the costs were well over $150 a year, was the minister cutting by half incontinence supplies, such as diapers and catheters for Albertans who are incontinent. Now, despite the minister's earlier contention that catheters can be recycled and reused, what evidence does the minister have to demonstrate that she has actually consulted with Albertans who are incontinent to know that this is a wise move to reduce their
their incontinence supplies, and that the increased hygiene now necessary will be attended to before these reductions are implemented.
Mr. Speaker, we consulted certainly very broadly with the Medical Advisory Committee that heads up the AIDS Daily Living Program, including urologists who are part of that consultative process. The clean catheterization method, as I've explained in this House, is one that's been used in other jurisdictions extensively, and part of our interest was to ensure that we were not promoting the use of throwaway products if we could in fact promote the use of reusable products. The honourable member underestimates and in fact undervalues the increases that we have provided into the AIDS to Daily Living program this year. If he will look at the estimates for the program last year, he'll find that the total expended was about $48 million, and it was a rate of growth that was running between 10 and 15% on the total program year over year. We have in fact increased the budget on the AIDS to Daily Living this year to $60 million, as appears in the budget address, in order that we can be able to fund more contemporary, more highly technological supplies, while at the same time asking that those supplies that could be provided for under $150 a year would be taken off of the list. I think it's a fair assessment of the real needs in order to support community living with those people who need it most. Remember that the cost sharing is only to $500. Any Albertan who needs more cost sharing than that has their bill totally covered by the province of Alberta.
Question period has expired. However, the Minister of Advanced Education wishes to reply to a previous question period. Questions raised by Edmonton Beverly. So Edmonton, the Minister first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Friday last, the Associate Minister of Family and Social Services took notice. A question from the Honourable Member from Edmonton Beverly, for Edmonton Beverly, with regard to the seniors programs at our post-secondary institution. As members may recall, Mr. Speaker, it was about April 8 or April 9 when I indicated to the committee supply at that time, about the reduction in program of some $123,000. I wanted to point out in response to the Honourable Member, Mr. Speaker, that the U of A seniors program, seniors are age 60 and not 65, and the registration fee of $25, which the Minister, or the Honourable Member was asking about, covers as many courses as members wish to take, seniors wish to take. The actual cost is $150 per course. The courses, Mr. Speaker, are non-credit. They're such things as lifestyle, the beginning writer, share your story, drive 55 plus, and so on. My department, Mr. Speaker, supported that for some 15 or 16 years, and it's the recent grant of some $30,000 was for cover administrative costs. It's obvious to most that the U of A has provided the majority of the subsidization. We have, Mr. Speaker, the Further Education Council, some 85 of them, who community education really, I think, fall within that bailiwick. In all good conscience, Mr. Speaker, my priorities as minister to see that Albertans are trained and educated. In all good conscience, I really can't continue to afford subsidization of this program. Seems to me in hindsight what should have happened over the years, because the accommodation charge of $55 costs $850. Those fees could have been or should have been adjusted over the years. So, Mr. Speaker, I met with some seniors recently just here in my office, and I've suggested to them a course of action they should consider, and I appreciate their suggestion of raising their own tuition fees. However, I do think the Edmonton Further Education Council probably would have a role to play with these future programs. Thank you.
Early.
Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the response from the Minister. I just want to ask, and the ministers or the seniors are in fact prepared to make a contribution. They're prepared to pay some for for this educational program. My question then again is to the Minister. Would the Minister, as I asked my second question, would the Minister care to look more closely or more precisely at what grants pay for, and in fact whether there are areas within those programs that in fact he could make some adjustments, consider what the seniors will pay, what he can make to allow particularly the seniors from rural areas to be able to access this program.
Mr. Speaker, with regard to these seniors. I want to ensure the honourable member heard me right, that the U of A has said seniors, by their definition, are age 60. That presents, I think, a bit of a dilemma. The 30,000 that my department has been contributing has gone towards administrative costs. Mr. Speaker, I'm not prepared to commit the department to continuing this because in the matter of priorities, my concern has to be with the student in the credit program. So at this time, I'm not prepared, although I'm always open, Mr. Speaker, to suggestions and recommendations, and I'll take the advice of the honourable member for Beverly on behalf of his and other constituents into consideration.
Point of order, Edmonton Meadowlark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in response to your mention earlier today with respect or reference to Section 409, subsection 3 of Beauchesne, where you ruled or indicated that my question might have been inappropriate because I was apparently seeking an opinion. Now, I appreciate that an opposition questioner and a speaker will probably never agree on the interpretation of a section of this nature. However, I would like to point out to the speaker with all due respect that in fact I was careful not to ask for an opinion but instead asked explicitly for the minister's, the premier's conclusion with respect to global warming, and I would hope, as most Albertans would, that conclusions on an important issue area of this nature wouldn't be based on opinion at all but would instead be based upon fact and empirical evidence. To suggest otherwise is to suggest that in fact the premier and his ministers would draw conclusions on something as important as global warming on the basis of their opinion. Most of us, and certainly I would expect all Albertans, would hope otherwise. Surely ministers and the premier of this government would conclude on the basis of fact and empirical evidence.
Well, honourable member, I'm sorry to have to quote Beauchesne back to you. Beauchesne is indeed the rules of this House, and all honourable members are supposed to be as knowledgeable of it as some of the rest of us are. And the honourable member has been here long enough that that admonition applies to yourself. There are plenty of other things in terms of oral questions, both in the questions and the answers, which are violated on almost a daily basis, and one can only hope to try to bring things to the attention of the members when they occur. I believe that the chair was courteous enough that waited to the end of your 3 questions today. You were not interrupted. You were not forbidden to ask your question, honourable member. But I'm only too happy now to quote back to you what the seeking of the opinion was in your first question. Quote, I wonder whether the minister could tell us what he has concluded himself. That's seeking an opinion. Close the quote. In the second question, quote, I wonder whether the premier could tell us what he personally has concluded about global warming. That's seeking an opinion. Thank you, honourable member. You're asking for an opinion. Now, the second part, if you care to examine the blues. Thank you very much, honourable member for Westlock Sturgeon. You have no part in this. Thank you, honourable member. Thank you again. Now, Edmonton Meadowlark, when you do take the time to examine the blues, you will see that you did then go on and ask a second question within both the first and second questions, which then allowed the matter to proceed. But I'm sorry that you feel so hard done by to be gently admonished by the chair that your questions were indeed out of order in their first sections. Thank you, honourable member. Thank you, honourable member. Order, please. Order.